Good morning.
Good morning.
Robert and Jill here. You know, we've been through a very difficult period where Robert and my daughter Jackie had COVID, and I thought it would be interesting and informative for you to hear about that, and maybe there's some tips that could be helpful to you. So, Robert, why don't you start out by saying, exactly what happened? How do you think that you contracted the virus?
So 5 members of our family flew from Los Angeles to Newark, and we attended an outdoor event in the Catskills. And on our return, actually the day that we returned, we learned that people at the event started to test positive for COVID. Mm-hmm. So as best as we can tell, although you can never tell, it seems like my daughter Jackie and I both contracted COVID outdoors in the Catskills.
Mm-hmm. And Robert is just 3 days negative, so he's tested completely negative for about 3 days. How are you feeling right now?
Good. I do feel fatigue. It's kind of an odd, I don't know quite how to say it. Normally when you feel tired, you feel tired. When this fatigue sort of hits you, it's like, oh my God, I'm really exhausted in a way that is unusual, I would say.
And a lot of people say, oh, it's not a big deal, get COVID, it's like a little cold. Was that what happened?
Not at all. And if I hear one more person say, oh, I had COVID, I didn't notice it.
It was no big deal.
Or it was like a little cold. So the first 4 or 5 days were rough for both me and my daughter. I would say it was like a bad flu. We had body aches, chills, sore throat, massive headache, nasal congestion, slight temperature, and just really felt very badly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And who took care of you during that time?
You did. Actually, you took care of me and Jackie. We have a guest house in our backyard. Jackie isolated over there. I isolated here in what we call the children's wing, which is sort of a glorified description of two bedrooms in a hallway. But it's isolated from the rest of the house.
But the point about that is that I didn't get it. It's right. So weird. We had 5 people in our party, myself, my son-in-law Matt, and my granddaughter Abby, who is just under 2 years, and the 3 of us did not get it. And what would you attribute that to?
I have to say I think that was due to masking. So obviously Jackie and I think, contracted it in New York. We then, the 5 of us, flew back to Los Angeles together. We sat in the same aisle on an airplane for 5.5 hours. We wore KN95 masks during that time. We held Abby in our lap. I sat next to Jill the entire way, and we did not infect the other 3 members of our party. And I really think that only has to be attributable to wearing masks on the plane.
Yeah.
And then
and
isolation.
To note, we did not wear masks outside at the event that we attended.
Right.
So we thought we were outside, it was fine. And there had been recommendations that everyone get tested before the event.
And we all did. We all got tested.
But
but antigen tests are, you can be infected and not know for up to 2 days. So we're not. I mean, it's almost impossible to know where you were infected. But
so
can I say a word about masks?
Yes, please.
So one thing we learned before we went to New York is that the FDA has changed its approval for N95 masks. And so if you buy N95 or KN95 masks on the internet, be sure to look to see whether these are the kind that are approved by the FDA. The FDA has withdrawn its approval for masks that are marketed as N95 masks. And the difference, you can see the difference. The ones approved by the FDA, they're 5-layer and they're just visibly thicker. But more to the point, they have 2 loops, one that goes around your neck and then one goes over your head. It's really a pain to put those on. They're not as convenient as the ones that just go behind your ears.
They're a little constricting.
But those are the medical grades, the one that the FDA has approved. So we purchased and used those FDA approved KN95 masks, which was very hard for someone like Jill, because you're going someplace, you're going out, and you have this two straps you have to put over your hair, but you have to do it.
It's my hair. Well, so when we got home on Monday, people were not feeling great, and by Monday night, Jackie and Matt both actually said, Jackie and Robert both said, I think we have COVID. But they were testing negative with the antigen test. So then Tuesday morning, we did a PCR test and were able to get the results within about an hour.
Right, and we both tested positive, and then later that day, by about 6 p.m.
that day,
we went on Paxlovid, which is an antiviral medication.
Yeah. So there's some controversy about that. They then test after taking the Paxlovid. I'm not sure we're pronouncing it right, but anyways, they started feeling better almost immediately, and then about 3 days later, they started testing lighter and lighter, and then negative pretty quickly.
Right, at about the 6-day mark, Jackie tested negative. I never completely tested negative, but it seemed that the Paxlovid was suppressing the viral load. Our symptoms did get better. And let me just say this. I know that there's a lot of, I'm not a doctor, we're not giving medical advice.
No.
But the point of Paxlovid is to keep you from getting severely ill. We did not get severely ill. And I don't know how much sicker we would have gotten if we didn't take Paxlovid. So we're going to tell you about the rebound infections that we have, but I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that the purpose of Paxlovid is to keep you out of the hospital. So let me just stop there and say neither of us ended up in the hospital, although I certainly understand why people end up in the hospital, given how sick we were.
I was very worried, I have to say, because Robert has, I don't know if they're weak lungs, but he often gets pneumonia, even though he has the pneumonia shot and all that. His lungs are just very susceptible to illness. And so I was very concerned, considering this is something that, goes into your chest and you get a cough and all that. So I was very glad to have the Paxlovid.
Right.
So everybody got a rebound. So after the 6th day, when everybody was testing positive, Jackie went home.
Testing negative.
Testing negative. Jackie went home to her family, and we thought everything was great. And then they got
Then
cold.
On day 8, our tests completely reversed, the antigen tests, and they were just bright red, indicating a high viral load. We then both went to urgent care. We were retested PCR and antigen test, and the urgent care doctor was quite surprised, said he had never seen a rebound infection like this.
The pharmacist said that only 20% of people get this rebound.
Yeah. So the second infection the rebound infection, and I won't call it a rebound infection. Obviously, the virus never left our bodies. It was suppressed for a while. It came back. And I just want to say this again. I'm not a doctor. I think people shouldn't talk as if Paxlovid causes rebound infections. The question is, what does it do? It kept us out of the hospital, and it suppressed our viral load for a while. It didn't suppress it forever, as it does for most people. Anyway, the urgent care doctor was quite surprised. But the second go-around was very much like a bad cold, which frankly the symptoms could be controlled much more easily by like Sudafed and traditional cold remedies.
The first infection, there was no head cold. It was just very bad, sort of flu, achy, horrible feeling. But the second one, Robert literally couldn't breathe. Yeah. So he did take Sudafed, and that was helpful.
And I should also note that my daughter had, and I did not, with the first infection, a very swollen throat, very painful. and we took her to urgent care and was prescribed prednisone, I think, which cleared it up in like 24 hours. That was like a miracle drug. So, what I would say is don't suffer with your symptoms. Go to urgent care and, see whether or not there's some relief that you can get.
So we hope we're at the end of the tunnel, and I'm so grateful that Robert is well, and we want to thank you for all of your good wishes and prayers, because I was struggling during the time that they were sick.
Well, it was 16, 17 days that Jill was taking care of 2 COVID patients, so that was
Well, let me also
something.
say that in those 16, 17 days, Robert did not miss a newsletter. And in fact, I think he wrote extra newsletters on the weekends.
Well,
I said, "Why are you writing?" He said, "I have nothing to do."
I was in isolation, and there was almost nothing to do.
So God bless you.
And I will say this also. Well, of course, when I had COVID, corresponded almost exactly with the release of the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs and Bruin and Bremerton. So those were, and then also sort of the blockbuster
Some of the hearings.
January 6th hearing with Cassidy Hutchinson. So, I wrote about that. I will say that this has caused me to renew my commitment to wearing masks, in the sense that, Jill and I went to a Angels game with Jackie and Matt 8 weeks ago, probably now, and I would say in a stadium of 35,000 people, we might have been among a couple hundred who were wearing masks, and so people looked at you like you were strange, that there was something wrong with you. But boy, it's absolutely, I'm not going out in public anymore without a KN95 masks, and frankly, I don't care what people think. If you can avoid getting COVID, avoid getting COVID. It is not, it's the luck of the draw. You might get a very mild case, and that's good for you, and someone else around you might get a severe case. So don't play the odds. Do the prudent thing. Continue to mask up. And, it's just going to take some time. And if you haven't gotten all of your boosters, get all of your boosters. I mean, thank God that when I had COVID, I had received 4 vaccine shots and I had Paxlovid available. I do not know what it would have been like if that wasn't the case. And so the 2 years of being careful, of staying in our house, using Instacart, not going out to eat, all of that stuff, frankly, I think protected us and paid off.
I love you, buddy.